It was just past midnight when Ethan found himself alone on the winding mountain road, the kind that swallows headlights whole and hums with the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. He'd driven this route 100 times before, but tonight felt different. The air was heavier, the fog thicker, and his radio crackled with whispers that didn't sound like static. Somewhere in the distance, a faint figure appeared. A woman in white, barefoot, her hair clinging to her face as she stood on the shoulder, waving desperately for help. Ethan's pulse quickened. The highway was deserted for miles. No cars, no houses, no reason for anyone to be out there. Something deep inside him screamed to keep driving. But another part, the human part, made him slow down. And that's when the night began to remember him. It was just past midnight when Ethan found himself alone on the mountain highway, the kind of road that seemed to stretch forever, twisting through the darkness like a living thing. The fog hung thick and low, swallowing the world beyond his headlights. Every few seconds, the wipers screeched across the windshield, fighting to clear the mist that clung like cobwebs. Ethan had been driving for hours. The hum of the engine and the rhythm of the road had blurred into one dull, hypnotic sound. His coffee was cold, the thermos empty, and his eyelids heavy from another 14-hour shift. He'd been doing supply deliveries for months now, driving from small town to small town, the kind of lonely job that slowly carved away at your nerves. The dashboard clock blinked 12:37 a.m. No music, no signal. Just the hiss of radio static like whispers trapped inside the speakers. He reached to turn the volume down and paused. For a moment he could have sworn he heard something in the static. A voice, faint, stretched, almost human. He froze, hand hovering over the dial. The whisper faded. Only silence remained. "Get it together, man," he muttered. "You're just tired." The fog thickened as the road narrowed, cutting between jagged cliffs and pine trees that stood like tall, black figures watching from the edges. His headlights caught the glint of road signs, each one flashing for a heartbeat before vanishing again. Then the beam hit something else, a shape. Small at first, then unmistakable. Someone was standing on the roadside. Ethan's foot hovered over the brake. His pulse spiked as the figure came into focus. A woman, barefoot, wearing a long white dress that fluttered faintly in the night breeze. Her skin looked pale, her hair damp and tangled, clinging to her face. She was waving both arms now, signaling him to stop. Ethan's mind raced. No way, not out here. There hadn't been a gas station or house for at least 30 miles. His hands tightened around the steering wheel as the truck slowed to a crawl. He rolled his window down a crack. The night air that slipped inside was freezing, carrying the sharp scent of pine and rain-soaked asphalt. "Hey," he called out. "You okay?" The woman took a step closer, her bare feet silent on the wet gravel. Her voice was soft, too soft, almost like it came from far away. "My car broke down. Please, I need help." Ethan leaned toward the window, trying to see past her into the fog. No car, no lights, just darkness. Something about her didn't feel right. Her clothes, they weren't just old, they looked out of time, like she'd stepped out of another decade entirely. But then she looked at him, really looked at him, and the fear in her eyes seemed so human, so desperate, that it cut through every instinct, telling him to drive away. He sighed, unlocking the passenger door. "All right, get in. I'll take you to the next town." The door creaked open, and as she climbed inside, a chill swept through the cab, the kind that settles into your bones. Her presence seemed to draw the warmth right out of the air. Ethan turned up the heater, but it barely helped. She sat perfectly still, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed straight ahead. No thank you. No sound at all. Outside, the fog swallowed the road completely, and Ethan eased the truck forward again, headlights cutting into the endless white. He glanced at her once more, and in that brief flash of dashboard light, he noticed something that made his breath catch. Her dress wasn't just wet. It was stained, dark patches near the hem, like dried blood that the fog hadn't yet washed away. Ethan looked back to the road, his throat tight, and somewhere, behind the hum of the engine, the radio whispered again. The truck rumbled steadily through the fog, its headlights piercing only a few feet ahead before dissolving into a white blur. Inside the cab, the silence grew heavier with every passing mile. Ethan kept glancing toward the woman beside him. She sat stiffly, her hands resting neatly on her lap, staring straight ahead. Her face was pale, almost translucent in the dim dashboard light. He cleared his throat. You said your car broke down back there? Didn't see any vehicle. Her voice came quiet, steady. You wouldn't. It went off the road. Just past the curve, Ethan frowned. The curve? She nodded once, eyes unmoving. People don't make it past that turn. Not when it's this foggy. A chill rippled through the truck's cabin. Ethan tried to laugh it off. Guess I picked the wrong night to take the scenic route. She didn't respond. He turned his eyes back to the road, trying to focus on the faint white lines barely visible beneath the mist. The air inside the truck had grown colder, his breath faintly fogging the glass. He reached for the heater again, twisting the dial all the way up. The fan whined, but no warm air came out. He rubbed his hands together. So, what's your name? The woman hesitated. Her lips parted slightly, but her voice was almost a whisper. Doesn't matter anymore, Ethan blinked. All right then. You live nearby? She smiled faintly. The kind of smile that felt wrong, like it didn't belong to the words that followed. I used to. Her tone was distant, like she was remembering something from a dream she wasn't supposed to. Ethan forced a laugh to break the tension. Well, wherever you're headed, you're lucky I came through when I did. I haven't seen another car all night. She turned her head slowly, meeting his gaze. Her eyes were calm, too calm. I know. No one drives this road anymore. That made him pause. What do you mean, anymore? Her gaze drifted back toward the windshield. After the crash, people stopped coming through. They say it's cursed, that the road keeps calling the ones who fell asleep behind the wheel. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. His heart began to beat faster, and for a moment he thought he smelled something faint. Smoke and the sickly sweet scent of gasoline. He swallowed hard. That's just talk. Accidents happen all the time. Her head tilted slightly. Do you believe that? He didn't answer. The fog outside seemed to pulse with every passing second, pressing closer to the truck. The sound of the engine felt muffled, distant, like the world outside was slowly being swallowed whole. Then she spoke again, softly. You should rest. You've been tired lately, haven't you? The question hit him like a slap. His hands froze mid-turn. What did you say? Her eyes flicked toward him, and for a split second they seemed darker, bottomless. You've been driving this road too long. Always tired. Always rushing home. Ethan's mouth went dry. How do you know that? Her lips curved just slightly. You drive this road every night. You always pass me. Every hair on his neck stood up. He turned sharply to face her. But the passenger seat was empty. His breath caught. The blanket she'd been clutching lay crumpled on the seat. The air inside the truck felt suddenly lighter but colder. His pulse thudded in his ears as he scanned the road. Nothing but fog and silence. Then he saw it. A small photograph resting on the seat where she had been. Its edges were curled, water-stained and old. Ethan picked it up with shaking hands. The image showed a truck, his truck, twisted metal and shattered glass at the bottom of a cliff. The headlights still glowed faintly in the darkness, and standing beside the wreck, almost blurred by the camera's focus, was the same woman, the same white dress, the same empty stare. Ethan's throat closed as a single word formed in his mind. Impossible. He looked up again, but the seat beside him remained empty. Only the whisper of the engine filled the space, echoing through the silence. Outside, the fog thickened until it swallowed everything, and somewhere, just beyond what he could see, a woman's voice whispered softly through the static of the radio. The curve is coming. Ethan's hands trembled on the steering wheel as the photograph sat on the dashboard, its corners fluttering each time he hit a bump. The image burned into his mind, his own truck crushed at the bottom of a ravine. The woman in white standing beside it, staring straight at the camera as if she'd been waiting for him to see it. The fog outside was getting thicker by the minute, swirling in ghostly shapes across the road. His headlights barely pierced more than a few feet ahead. The world beyond the glass had dissolved into shadows and gray mist, as though the road were suspended in nothing. His radio, silent since the voice whispered, "The curve is coming," suddenly crackled again. A faint hum, then static, then a woman's voice, fragile but clear. "Don't fall asleep. Ethan." He slammed his foot against the brake pedal in shock, but the truck barely slowed. The wheels skidded on the slick asphalt. His name. She'd said his name. His pulse thundered. He looked around, heart pounding. The fog outside moved unnaturally, curling around the truck like it was alive. The GPS screen flickered, the route line twisting and distorting, the glowing blue arrow spinning in circles. Then the mechanical voice announced in a warped tone, "Sharp turn ahead, sharp turn ahead." Ethan squinted through the windshield. He could barely make out the faint curve of the guardrail up ahead, the one she had mentioned. He eased on the brakes, but the truck fishtailed slightly. His hands gripped the wheel tighter. Sweat dripped down his temple even though the air inside was freezing. The fog pulsed once, and through it he saw them, two faint red dots, swaying back and forth like the taillights of another car just ahead. Relief flooded him. Someone else is out here. He pressed the accelerator slightly to catch up, but then the taillights flickered. One blinked out, then the other, gone. Ethan blinked hard, leaning forward. What the hell? A second later, his headlights caught a glimpse of twisted metal in the fog. A mangled car resting against the guardrail, smoke rising faintly from the hood. He slowed, pulling closer. The front of the car was crumpled, windshield shattered. The license plate was unreadable, covered in mud and ash. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the cold air. The silence was suffocating. Even the usual chirping of crickets had vanished. The fog moved sluggishly around him, thick as smoke, carrying a faint smell of burned rubber and gasoline. Ethan approached the wreck slowly. There was no one inside. The driver's door hung open. He swung his light around, scanning the ground. Tire marks cut deep into the asphalt, long, looping lines that ended right where the guardrail bent outward. And then he saw something that made his stomach twist. The tread pattern. He recognized it. It was his. The same brand, the same wear marks, identical to the tires on his truck. He followed the tracks backward with the flashlight, from the guardrail, to the middle of the road, and then straight to where his own truck stood idling. A sharp breath escaped him. That's impossible. The radio crackled again. You didn't make it that night. Ethan spun around. The woman was standing behind him, half shrouded in fog. Her white dress rippled softly, her hair dripping down her shoulders. But there was something different about her now, a faint glow around her like light passing through water. He stumbled back. What do you mean, that night? Her expression softened, almost pitying. You were tired, Ethan. You fell asleep before the curve. I tried to warn you. He shook his head violently. No, I'm right here. I stopped. I'm alive. The woman's voice echoed through the fog, layered, distant, as if a dozen others whispered along with her. Not this time. You stopped this time. Behind her, faint silhouettes began to form in the mist, shadowy outlines of other figures standing near the edge, silent and still. The air shimmered with the faint hum of something otherworldly. Ethan's flashlight flickered. The world tilted, and in a rush of sickening realization, he understood. This wasn't a warning. It was a replay. The road was remembering him. He stumbled backward toward his truck, chest heaving, eyes darting to the edge of the cliff. The tire marks didn't just stop. They ended abruptly, like something had lifted the car midair. And from below, through the endless fog, came a faint metallic creak, the sound of crushed steel, his own. The fog swallowed everything. It pressed against Ethan's skin like damp hands, cold and heavy, muffling every sound except the faint ticking of his truck's engine. He tried to step backward, but his legs felt like lead. The woman's eyes followed him, calm but sorrowful, the kind of sadness that came from knowing the end long before it arrived. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Her voice wasn't a threat. It was a plea. Ethan shook his head, trying to steady his breathing. I don't understand. I was driving, I saw you, I stopped. You said I fell asleep, but I'm awake now. The woman's lips trembled faintly. That's what they all say the first time. The first time? He echoed. She took a step closer. The fog curled around her feet like smoke from a dying fire. Every soul that dies on this road lingers here, reliving the moment, trying to change it. You've been here before, Ethan. You just don't remember. He felt the ground tilt beneath him. No, that's not possible. She raised her hand, and suddenly the fog around them rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Shapes began to emerge. Silhouettes, hundreds of them, all standing along the roadside. Men, women, even children. Some still had faint outlines of their last moments. A cracked helmet, a torn jacket, a flickering headlight dangling in midair. They weren't monsters. They were victims. Ethan's heart hammered. Who are they? The lost, she said softly. People who couldn't let go. Some died chasing help. Some froze in fear. Some couldn't forgive themselves. A cold shiver crept up his spine. He looked around, realizing the silence wasn't silence at all, and it was full of whispers. Faint, desperate voices overlapping like wind through trees. Help me. I didn't mean to. It happened so fast. Each one sounded familiar, too human to ignore. The woman turned toward the guardrail, her dress swaying in the unseen breeze. You wanted to save me. You always did. Ethan's throat tightened. Then why couldn't I? Her gaze met his, eyes glistening, reflecting the weak glow of his headlights. Because I wasn't real that night. I was the road's way of warning you. But you were too tired, too kind to pass me by. Her voice broke slightly on the last words, and Ethan felt a surge of guilt twist in his chest. So, what happens now? He whispered. You have a choice, she said, turning back to face him. Stay here reliving this night like the rest, or help someone else before they make your mistake. As if on cue, a low rumble echoed from the distance, the faint hum of an approaching engine. Headlights pierced through the fog far down the road, faint but growing brighter. A living driver. Ethan's heart leapt. Someone's coming, the woman nodded. They can't see the curve through the fog. If you don't stop them, they'll join us. He looked down at his trembling hands. But how? They can't see me. You don't need to be seen, she said gently. You just need to be felt. Ethan turned toward the sound, his resolve solidifying. For the first time since he'd stopped the truck, the fear in his chest was replaced by something else. Purpose. He sprinted back to the middle of the road, waving his arms frantically as the distant headlights grew larger. His voice tore through the night. Stop, the curve! Stop! The car's horn blared, tires screeched, and the vehicle veered sharply, missing the broken guardrail by inches. The driver's terrified face flashed for a second before the car came to a shaky halt. Ethan stood there, panting as the driver got out, trembling but alive. The man looked around, confused, calling out into the fog. Hello, is someone there? But there was no answer. The woman in white smiled faintly, her outline already fading. You did it. Ethan turned to her, his voice breaking. What happens now? Her expression softened. Now, you can rest. As she dissolved into mist, a faint warmth spread through the air, like the first light of dawn cutting through the darkness. The figures along the road began to fade, their whispers softening into silence. And for the first time, the fog began to lift. Ethan looked down. His body was fading too, translucent and weightless. A tear rolled down his cheek as the night carried his last whisper. Maybe I wasn't meant to live forever, but at least someone else will. The air was still. The fog that had once strangled the night was now thinning, curling upward into the dawn sky like fading breath. The road stretched endlessly into the horizon, empty, silent, and washed in the pale orange glow of sunrise. The driver Ethan had saved, a young man in his late 20s, stood on the side of the road, trembling beside his dented sedan. His chest heaved as he tried to make sense of what had happened. The curve, the sudden voice in his head screaming, "Stop!" at the flicker of a figure standing in the fog. He looked around, eyes scanning the mist. Hello, is someone there? No answer, just the faint whisper of the wind. He took a cautious step forward, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. And that's when he noticed something glinting near the edge of the cliff, a small rusted license plate half buried in the dirt. He picked it up, brushing away the dust. The numbers were faint but legible. A date was scratched into the corner, October 17th, 2016. The man frowned. The metal felt cold and too cold. He turned it over and froze. Etched beneath the rust was a name, E. Carson. He swallowed hard. The name didn't mean anything to him, but the air around him suddenly felt heavy, charged, almost watchful. He turned toward the guardrail and saw faint tire marks leading straight to the edge, long since dried and cracked. Something about them felt old, ancient. He stepped back slowly, unease prickling at his skin. Thank you, he murmured under his breath, not knowing why. It just felt right. The wind carried his words into the valley below, and for a brief moment he could have sworn he heard a whisper come back. Drive safe. Miles away, where the fog still lingered deep between the trees, something stirred in a quiet shimmer of light, faint and flickering like the last ember of a dying fire. Ethan stood at the roadside, transparent now, his outline fading into the morning air. The woman in white appeared beside him, her expression soft, peaceful. "You kept your promise," she said gently. He nodded, his voice quiet but steady. "I couldn't let someone else end like I did." The woman looked toward the horizon. "Most don't. Most forget what they were." "You remembered." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I was too stubborn." She laughed softly, a sound that didn't echo but lingered in the still air. "Then maybe that's why you were chosen." "Chosen?" She turned to him. "The road remembers those who care. Every soul that shows mercy leaves a trace of light behind, and every trace weakens the darkness." Ethan glanced down at his hands. They were glowing faintly now, dissolving into golden dust. "So this is it?" She nodded. "Not the end, just peace." The sun broke through the clouds spilling over the valley. The light caught the fog, turning it gold. The shadows shrank back into the trees. As Ethan faded completely, he looked down the road one last time, at the place where countless others would drive, unaware of the souls who once walked here, trying to protect them. A soft smile crossed his face. "No one drives alone," he whispered, and then he was gone. Hours later, as the day grew bright, a state trooper found the young man's car parked safely by the shoulder. The driver was shaken but unharmed. When the officer asked what happened, he hesitated, then said quietly, "Someone warned me. I don't know who, but I think he saved my life." The trooper nodded slowly. "You'd be surprised how many people say that on this road." They looked out over the valley together, the wind carrying a faint, familiar sound. Not quite words, but something close. A whisper that felt both eerie and comforting. "Slow down. It's not your time."